The night was meticulously planned. Every detail reflected the Lancaster family's wealth and influence. The golden decor, the subtle scent of white roses, and the string quartet playing softly in the background. But none of it would matter in a few moments. Helena Lancaster, stunning in a black velvet gown, felt an inexplicable weight in her chest. It was a dark premonition, a sense that something was about to fall apart. The main doors swung open, and time seemed to slow. Ethan Lancaster, immaculate in his tuxedo, strode into the ballroom with a composed but unreadable expression. Beside him was a young woman, breathtaking in a crimson dress that shimmered like molten fire. Conversations faltered, whispers quickly spreading like ripples across the room. Curious and shocked gazes followed them. Helena didn't need anyone to explain. She knew. Deep down in her core, she knew. The world blurred around her, but she stood tall. Her face remained calm, yet her eyes betrayed the storm building inside. As Ethan and the woman stopped before her, Helena's throat tightened. He actually brought his mistress to my birthday? The thought clawed at her mind, disbelief colliding with rage. She locked eyes with Camille, the woman who had the audacity to appear here, exuding a quiet smugness that ignited Helena's fury even more. Helena, this is Camille. She's been helping me with some important matters at work, Ethan said, his voice measured but hollow. It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it. Camille smiled faintly but remained silent, letting her presence speak louder than any words. The tension between them thickened, suffocating. Matters at work? Helena repeated, her voice sharp, her smile colder than ice. And you thought tonight, at my party, was the perfect occasion to introduce her to everyone? Her eyes drilled into his, daring him to justify the humiliation. Ethan's gaze didn't waver, though his sigh revealed a weariness, as if he had already braced for this confrontation long ago. The room felt smaller, tighter. Helena could feel the weight of the stairs, the quiet murmurs around them. The whispers would spread like wildfire by morning. Yet there was something deeper gnawing at her. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a declaration of war, a message that couldn't be ignored. Forcing a smile, she said in a tone dripping with icy grace, "Well, enjoy the party. I'm sure it'll be unforgettable." As Ethan walked away with Camille, Helena clenched her fists. The battle was only beginning. Before the story continues, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. It helps us bring more emotional stories like this one to you. Now, without further ado, get ready, because this story will keep you hooked from start to finish. Helena retreated to a quieter corner of the mansion, the noise of the party fading behind her. She needed space to breathe, to process what had just happened. But the air around her was suffocating. She leaned against a marble pillar, her perfectly styled hair now feeling heavy on her head. How dare he? The question repeated in her mind like a relentless drumbeat. After everything they had built together, the life, the sacrifices, Ethan had humiliated her in front of their closest friends. Her vision blurred momentarily as she fought back tears. No, she wouldn't cry. Not tonight. She couldn't give the vultures circling the ballroom that satisfaction. Helena inhaled deeply, trying to regain her composure. Through the tall, arched windows, she caught a glimpse of Ethan and Camille. They stood near the champagne fountain, Camille laughing softly at something Ethan had said. His hand lingered on her lower back, a gesture too intimate to ignore. The sight twisted a knife deeper into Helena's chest. "Helena, are you all right?" A voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. It was Catherine Moore, a family friend with a reputation for gossip. Catherine's eyes sparkled with curiosity, though her tone feigned concern. Helena straightened herself immediately, masking the turmoil behind a polite smile. "Of course, Catherine. It's my birthday, after all. Why wouldn't I be?" Helena replied, her voice steady, but she could see Catherine wasn't convinced. The woman's gaze darted toward Ethan and Camille in the distance, her smirk barely concealed. "Well, you know how people talk. Ethan certainly knows how to keep things interesting." The insinuation hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Helena clenched her jaw, forcing herself not to react. People will always find something to talk about. Let them. I have nothing to be ashamed of, she said, her words sharper than intended. Catherine raised an eyebrow but said nothing further, sensing the tension. She offered a vague smile before excusing herself, clearly disappointed that Helena hadn't broken down in front of her. As Catherine walked away, Helena's mask cracked for a brief moment. She bit her lip, the taste of iron grounding her. She could feel the walls of her world slowly crumbling. Memories of better times with Ethan flashed through her mind. His promises, the warmth in his eyes that had once made her believe in forever. But those promises were ashes now, scattered at her feet. Helena knew that this betrayal was only the beginning of something far worse. She wasn't just fighting for her pride tonight. She was fighting for her place in a world that devoured the weak. Helena rejoined the party with her head held high, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. The whispers followed her like shadows, weaving through the crowd, but she pretended not to notice. Each smile from a guest felt insincere, each glance loaded with silent judgment. These people didn't care about her pain, they came for the show. And Ethan had given them exactly what they wanted. She felt trapped in a spotlight that burned hotter with every passing moment. Across the room, Ethan stood with a group of business associates, his arm still casually resting on Camille's shoulder. Helena's nails dug into her palm as she watched them. He looked so at ease, as if none of this mattered. Did he even care that he'd shattered her trust? For years, she had been the perfect wife, loyal, graceful, always putting his needs above her own. But tonight, the image of their perfect marriage was crumbling like a facade made of glass. Helena, the voice of David Parker, Ethan's longtime business partner, broke her train of thought. David had always been one of the few people in their circle she respected. His gray eyes softened with concern as he approached her. "Is everything all right? You look distracted." Helena forced another polite smile, though it felt like her face might crack from the effort. "Everything is wonderful, David. I'm simply overwhelmed by all the excitement," she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. David glanced toward Ethan and Camille, his brow furrowing slightly. He wasn't a man easily fooled by appearances. "I see," he said carefully, lowering his voice. "You know, you've always been the backbone of this family. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." His words lingered longer than she expected, striking a chord deep within her. For a moment, Helena felt a flicker of strength reignite. Maybe not everyone in this world was waiting to see her fall. "Thank you, David. That means more than you know," Helena said softly. But as he walked away, the weight of her reality came crashing back down. Ethan had betrayed her, not just privately but in the most public, humiliating way possible. If she didn't take control of the situation soon, the rumors would devour her reputation. She would not be reduced to a pitiful figure of gossip. No, Helena Lancaster was stronger than that. And if Ethan thought he could destroy her without consequences, he was sorely mistaken. Helena moved gracefully through the crowd, her mind racing with plans and countermeasures. She had spent her entire adult life mastering the art of control, controlling her emotions, her image, and her role as Ethan's wife. But now, all those years of work teetered on the brink of collapse. Every glance, every hushed whisper was another reminder of how precarious her position had become. She wasn't just fighting for her dignity. She was defending her legacy. From across the ballroom, Ethan's gaze briefly met hers. It wasn't an apologetic look. There was no remorse in his eyes, only a cold detachment. That indifference cut deeper than any words could. How long has he been like this? Helena wondered bitterly. Had he been pretending for months? Years? The thought unsettled her more than the betrayal itself. The man she had once loved was now a stranger in her own home. She found herself standing near the grand staircase, her hands gripping the banister as if to steady herself. Camille's laughter rang out, light and melodic, cutting through the air like a taunt. Helena turned slightly, watching as the young woman charmed their guests, her every move calculated and effortless. Camille wasn't just some passing fling. No, This woman had a purpose, and that purpose was to insert herself into Helena's life like a parasite. "Do you want me to make a scene?" A low, familiar voice spoke near her ear. It was Emily, her younger sister. Emily, unlike Helena, had never played by society's rules. She thrived on chaos and was often seen as the black sheep of the family. Tonight, however, Helena was grateful for her presence. Helena smiled faintly but shook her head. "No, Emily, that's exactly what they want. They want me to crack," she whispered back. Emily followed her gaze toward Ethan and Camille, her jaw tightening in silent disapproval. "Well, you're a better woman than me," Emily muttered. "If that were my husband, I'd already have poured red wine all over his perfect little suit." The thought brought a brief, almost involuntary chuckle to Helena's lips. It was the first moment of levity she'd felt all night, but as quickly as it came, it faded. No, she wouldn't stoop to that level. She would handle this with precision and strategy. Ethan had made his move. Now it was her turn. Helena slipped out of the ballroom, the muffled sounds of music and laughter fading behind her as she made her way through the dimly lit corridors of the mansion. She needed a moment away from the eyes and expectations pressing down on her. As she walked deeper into the quiet halls, old memories crept back. Years of being the perfect wife, of hiding her doubts and fears behind polished smiles. Tonight, however, the mask was slipping, and she wasn't sure how long she could keep it on. She reached Ethan's private study and hesitated for a moment. This room had always been his sanctuary, a place where she was rarely invited. But tonight, boundaries no longer mattered. Determined, she pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The scent of leather and aged whiskey lingered in the air. Helena's eyes scanned the room until they landed on something that made her pause. A set of documents sprawled across his desk. Curiosity overcame caution. She moved closer and began flipping through the papers. Contracts, financial reports. But one document in particular caught her attention. It was a legal agreement, something involving a large transfer of assets. Helena's heart raced as she scanned the details. Ethan had been quietly rearranging their finances, shifting investments and properties into separate accounts. Accounts with only his name on them. "He's preparing to cut me out," she realized with a sinking feeling. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, pulling her from her thoughts. Helena quickly gathered the papers and stepped behind the large oak desk. Just as the door creaked open, Ethan entered, his face hardening the moment he saw her. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded, his tone sharp and devoid of warmth. "I could ask you the same," she replied, holding up the papers. "Planning to leave me with nothing, Ethan? Or were you hoping I wouldn't notice until it was too late?" Her voice was steady, but inside, her fury threatened to boil over. Ethan's jaw tightened, and for the first time that night, a flicker of guilt flashed across his face, quickly replaced by cold resolve. "This isn't the time or place for this conversation," he said quietly. His words were calm, but the underlying threat was unmistakable. Helena took a step forward, her eyes blazing with defiance. "No, Ethan. You made sure tonight would be the perfect time. You humiliated me in front of everyone. So don't you dare act like the victim now." The silence stretched between them, thick with tension. Both of them knew this confrontation was only the beginning of a much larger battle. What would you do in Helena's place? Did she do the right thing confronting Ethan, or should she have waited? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to take a stand like Helena? What do you think will happen next? Comment your thoughts and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories. Ethan stepped closer to Helena, his gaze dark and calculating. The tension between them was suffocating. For years, they had played their roles perfectly. He the successful businessman, she the loyal and graceful wife. But tonight, the carefully constructed illusion lay in ruins. "You don't understand, Helena," he said, his voice low and controlled. "This is bigger than you think." Helena let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Bigger than me? Oh, I understand perfectly. You've been orchestrating this for a long time, haven't you? The woman, the financial moves, the lies. You've been preparing to walk away, leaving me with nothing, Her voice cracked on the last word, but she quickly composed herself. She wouldn't let him see how deeply he had wounded her. Ethan's expression hardened further. It's not as simple as you think. You've always believed in appearances, Helena, but you don't know what it's like to have real enemies. People who want to see everything you've built destroyed. I'm protecting both of us. He spoke with a quiet intensity, but Helena wasn't convinced. His words felt hollow, another layer of manipulation meant to confuse and control her. Protecting us? Helena repeated, incredulous. By parading your mistress around in front of all our friends? By hiding assets behind my back? Spare me, Ethan. Whatever threats you're facing, you decided long ago that I wasn't part of the solution. Her eyes locked onto his, daring him to deny it. But Ethan didn't flinch. His silence said more than any words could. The door to the study creaked again, and both of them turned abruptly. Camille stood in the doorway, her presence as disruptive as a cold wind. Is everything all right? She asked, her voice sweet but laced with subtle arrogance. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze shifting between the two of them. It was clear she knew exactly what she had walked in on. Helena's stomach twisted in disgust. Everything's fine, Ethan said quickly, his voice suddenly more composed. Helena noted how easily he slipped into damage control, smoothing over the tension for Camille's benefit. It was a performance, and he was good at it. But Helena had had enough. Actually, Camille, Helena said, stepping forward with an icy smile, we were just finishing up, but I'm sure Ethan can fill you in on the details later. Camille raised an eyebrow but didn't respond, sensing the venom beneath Helena's polite tone. Without another word, Helena brushed past both of them, her mind racing. Ethan thought he had the upper hand, but he had underestimated her. That would be his first mistake. Helena walked briskly through the hallways of the mansion, her heels echoing like distant gunshots. The confrontation with Ethan and Camille replayed in her mind, each word sharpening her resolve. He thought he could break her quietly, dismantling their life one piece at a time while keeping up appearances. But she would not go down without a fight. Helena needed someone she could trust, someone who understood how to navigate this treacherous world, and she knew exactly who that person was. Emily was leaning against the balcony overlooking the ballroom, swirling a glass of wine in her hand. Helena approached her, her expression grim. Emily took one look at her and raised an eyebrow. So, I take it that didn't go well? She asked, her tone casual but laced with concern. Helena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she grabbed Emily by the arm and pulled her into a quieter corner of the house. I need your help, Helena said in a hushed but urgent tone. Emily's eyes narrowed slightly as she straightened up. All right, what kind of help are we talking about? Because if you want me to cause a scene, you know I'm more than capable, Emily offered with a sly grin. Helena shook her head. No, not yet. But Ethan is hiding things. Financial documents, assets he's been transferring out of our accounts. He's preparing for something big, and I need to know exactly what it is before he blindsides me. Emily's playful demeanor faded as she processed Helena's words. So he's already moving against you, she said quietly. Damn it, that bastard's more ruthless than I thought. For a moment, the sisters stood in silence, the gravity of the situation settling between them. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice firm. All right, we'll outmaneuver him. I have a few contacts who specialize in uncovering things people like Ethan would rather keep hidden. Discreetly, of course. Helena nodded, relief washing over her like a tide. Emily might have been the rebellious one in the family, but she was fiercely loyal when it came to those she cared about. Thank you, Emily. I can't afford to lose control of this situation. If he takes everything, Helena couldn't finish the sentence. The very thought of losing her home, her identity, was unbearable. She had built this life with Ethan, sacrificed so much for it. Now she had to defend it with everything she had. You won't lose, Emily said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on Helena's shoulder. Not if we play this smart. You're stronger than he thinks. And trust me, I've seen men like Ethan before. They always slip up when they think they've already won. Helena's lips curved into a small, determined smile. Ethan had underestimated her, and that would be his downfall. The game had changed, and Helena was ready to take back control. The next morning, Helena sat at the edge of her bed, the early sunlight filtering through the heavy curtains. Sleep had eluded her, but exhaustion no longer mattered. She had spent the entire night strategizing, going over every memory, every clue Ethan might have left behind. There had to be more pieces to the puzzle. Her phone vibrated softly on the nightstand. It was a text from Emily. "Meeting is set. Noon. I'll come pick you up." By the time Emily arrived, Helena was dressed in a tailored navy suit, sharp, armored for battle. They drove silently through the city, the tension between them palpable. Emily's contacts were well-connected, people who thrived in the shadows of wealth and power. If anyone could uncover Ethan's hidden plans, it was them. As the car pulled up to a discreet office building on the outskirts of town, Helena took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever truths might come to light. Inside, a man named Marcus greeted them. He was in his late 40s with a calm but intimidating presence. His sharp eyes gave Helena the impression he could read her thoughts. "Mrs. Lancaster, Emily told me a bit about your situation. You want information and I can get it. Financial records, hidden transactions, offshore accounts. But there's a risk. If Ethan catches wind of this, things could escalate quickly." Helena nodded, her expression unwavering. "I understand the risks, but I'm not going to sit back and let him dismantle my life. I need to know exactly what he's planning and how far he's willing to go." Marcus studied her for a moment before pulling out a folder. "We've already found some interesting movements. He's been funneling money through a series of dummy corporations. It's a complex web, but there's one recurring name. Blackridge Holdings." "Blackridge," Helena repeated under her breath. The name stirred something in the back of her mind, but she couldn't quite place it. Emily leaned forward. "What do we know about them?" she asked. Marcus glanced at Helena. "They're a shadow company with ties to powerful players. Ethan might be leveraging them to protect his assets, or to make a move you won't see coming." Helena's stomach churned. Ethan wasn't just protecting his fortune. He was aligning himself with people who could erase her from the picture entirely. This was no longer about divorce or public humiliation. It was a war for survival. "I want everything you can find on Blackridge," she said, her voice steely. "And I need it fast. Ethan thinks he's in control, but that's about to change." Marcus nodded. The game was accelerating, and Helena was done playing defensively. Now it was her turn to strike. Later that evening, Helena returned to the mansion with a new sense of purpose. She had the information she needed, proof of Ethan's dealings and his partnership with Blackridge Holdings. Every step he had taken to secure his power and wealth was now in her hands. But this battle wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her sense of self. The time for subtlety was over. Tonight, she would confront him with everything. The house was quiet, the distant ticking of a grandfather clock echoing through the halls. Helena found Ethan in his study, seated in his leather chair, sipping from a glass of whiskey. He didn't look surprised to see her. In fact, he seemed calm, almost bored. "What is it now, Helena? Another lecture about public appearances?" he asked, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Helena walked slowly into the room, her heels striking the floor with quiet authority. She placed the documents from Marcus on the desk in front of him. "Recognize these?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with menace. Ethan glanced at the papers, his expression darkening as he flipped through them. "You've been busy," he muttered, setting the folder down. "You had someone investigate me?" "I had no choice," Helena shot back. "You've been plotting behind my back for months, maybe years. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? You're aligning yourself with Blackridge. Do you even realize how dangerous they are?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond immediately. For the first time, she saw a flash of unease in his eyes. "It's business, Helena. Something you've never fully understood. I'm doing what I have to in order to secure our future." "Our future?" Helena laughed bitterly. "Don't insult me. This was never about us. You wanted to secure your future by erasing me from the equation. Well, guess what? I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. She leaned in closer, her voice low and venomous. If you think for 1 second that I'll let you take everything from me, you're sorely mistaken. I have enough evidence to destroy you, Ethan. You're not as untouchable as you think. The tension crackled like a live wire. Ethan's calm facade was crumbling, his eyes narrowing dangerously. You're making a mistake, he warned, his voice cold. If you push too hard, there will be consequences. Helena met his gaze without flinching. I'm not afraid of you, and for the first time in years, I see you for what you really are. A coward hiding behind power and lies. The words hung heavy in the air, a final declaration of war. There would be no turning back now. The mansion was eerily silent. Helena stood in the center of the ballroom, the same place where her humiliation had begun just days ago. Now, however, she wasn't the woman who had been blindsided and ridiculed. She had taken back control of her life and was about to deliver a final, crushing blow. Tonight's gathering had a different purpose, one that would put an end to Ethan's charade once and for all. Guests began arriving, their curiosity barely hidden. Word had spread that Helena was hosting an emergency meeting for select members of their social circle. Among them were business associates, key investors, and powerful figures who had once trusted Ethan implicitly. He hadn't been informed of the gathering. Helena intended to catch him off guard, exposing the truth before he had time to react. When Ethan finally entered, flanked by Camille, the atmosphere shifted. Whispers rippled through the room like an electric current. He froze upon seeing the crowd, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Helena stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "Ethan," she greeted coolly, her voice carrying across the room. "I thought it was time to bring everyone up to speed on some developments." "What the hell is this, Helena?" Ethan demanded, his composure slipping. Camille glanced around nervously, clearly sensing the shift in power. Helena ignored his question, instead turning to the gathered guests. "Many of you have placed your trust and your finances in Ethan Lancaster, but I regret to inform you that trust has been severely misplaced. I have evidence proving that Ethan has been making deals behind your backs, funneling assets into Blackridge Holdings." Gasps filled the room as Helena gestured for Marcus, who was present, to distribute copies of the incriminating documents. Ethan's face contorted with fury. "You're making a scene, Helena," he growled, stepping toward her. But she didn't back down. "No, Ethan. I'm exposing the truth. You've been lying to everyone, including me, and now they know. You're finished." The weight of her words hit him like a sledgehammer. The crowd murmured in shock, their trust in him unraveling. Investors began demanding answers, and some even threatened to pull their support immediately. Ethan clenched his fists, knowing the damage was irreversible. He had lost his reputation, his power, and the upper hand he had fought so hard to maintain. Camille quietly slipped away, leaving him standing alone in the center of the storm. Helena turned on her heel and walked away, her head held high. For the first time in years, she felt free. The chains of fear and betrayal had been broken. This wasn't just a victory, it was a new beginning. Helena Lancaster was finally in control of her own destiny. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments and let others experience this journey too. See you in the next video.